Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to all my brothers and sisters and to my children. Um, inshallah, today we will read from verse 58. But before I go into verse 58, I just want to mention something else which, alhamdulillah, with the rebels, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and grace, something came to me later after we covered verse 55, in which there are a couple of things I just want to link, and that was when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about to believers that I'm going to make you deputies on earth. So that's sort of, we need to keep that in mind. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says towards the end of the verse 55 that since they worship me alone and don't associate any partners with me, so these two kind of texts, different text that has appeared, the word deputize came at the beginning of the verse 55, and then Allah says, since they worship me alone, so and they don't associate partners with me. And why I want to link this kind of these two terms or the text is that because nowadays we hear and we believe and we talk about now and then that some of the corrupt leaders around the world and some of the Muslim world leaders as well, they believe that the Western powers can obviously they can gain power, the leadership of their own countries, with the help of Western countries. And the Western countries kind of play a pivot role when it comes to deciding who is going to govern, who's going to lead a country. And like I said, there's Muslim countries. And so it's really here, I think there's a message that those, Allah says that I will give you honor, I will give you izzat in a sense, and I will take the fear out of you. But the condition is that you believe me alone, you worship me alone, and don't associate any partners. And if we associate any partners, then we know the punishment. So I just wanted to touch on that. Now we're going to read from verse 58, and the main message of this passage is mannerism and encouraging the visits to the family members in their homes. So that's the main kind of message of this passage. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says from verse 58, chapter 24, Surah Al Nur, it reads, believers, your slaves and children who haven't yet reached the puberty, the age of balaghat, should ask permission before entering your rooms 3 times of the day. Before the dawn prayer, at midday, and when you get undressed, and after the evening prayer. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again is sharing, and Allah says afterwards, towards the end of this verse 59, that this is how Allah makes his verses clear for you. Yeah. So this is how, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically teaching us the mannerism, how we should. So Allah says that you shouldn't enter into rooms 3 times during the day, and that is before the Fajr prayer. So you should seek permission, yeah, before you enter into a couple's room, yeah. So before the Fajr prayer, and there's a hadith of there's a number of hadiths which have been narrated, but the main message of the hadith was that Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anhu and Prophet ﷺ said that one would not like to see his mother in a state where he, in an unpleasant or unwilling in a state where obviously you don't want to see your mother. So when you obviously entering before the Fajr or and then afternoon time. So what happens is that in the Middle East, as we know, and in some of the Asian countries as well, yeah, it gets very, especially during the summer, it gets very humid, very warm, and then businesses then close, and then people go home for rest. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that during the day, at midday, before and then Allah says when you get dressed. So obviously when you go home, you get dressed, and then you change something into something comfortable, and again because you have a wife at home, and then you may indulge into the things, and then Allah says that after the evening prayer, so that's after Isha prayer. So these are the 3 times Allah says that if you enter into a couple's home, so Allah says right at the beginning that your slaves and your children should not enter into a room where your parents are sleeping during those times. And then 3 times of the, so these are the 3 times Allah says, these are the times of privacy. Outside these times, then Allah says, outside these times there is no blame on you or them to wander in and out of each other's rooms. Yeah, so obviously that is how Allah makes His verses clear for you. Allah is knowing and wise. Then verse 59, we go on to verse 59 and reads, when your children reach puberty, they must ask permission, like those mentioned before. So anyone who has reached, like slaves, Allah said, and children. This is how Allah makes His verses clear for you. Allah is knowing and wise. Then on the there's a small passage on concessions for older women from verse 60, and it reads, older women who have no desire to marry may remove their outer garments as long as they don't display any beauty. There's no blame on them. However, even for them it's better to remain modest. Allah is hearing and knowing. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that those older females, when they come into homes, their own homes, so the way we as a Muslim woman is supposed to dress when she goes out of her home, is that she, as we have seen our females as well, so they have, for example, they have shalwar kameez, and then they have a small, very thin material, what we call a scarf or dupatta, yeah, and then they have a bigger chadar, in a sense, a bigger large scarf, which covers, one how they cover with themselves. So it covers their head and cover their the front, the chest area as well. So is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, ulama say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about this big chadar, in a sense, that an older lady who doesn't have a desire of marrying, or she has reached the age where they don't have these monthly cycles, they can remove this bigger chadar at home. But Allah then goes on to say it is better if they are modest. And so Allah says that if you keep it on for my sake, this is the whole thing. I keep repeating this, that whatever we do, every little act that we do, if we do it with the consciousness, with the taqwa, that I'm going to keep this one, for example, this bigger chadar to cover myself, even when I'm sitting with my grandchildren, with my own children, with my the females of the rest of the family, I'm going to still keep them. And this is the habits, this is the message we're giving to rest of the family, to rest of the family, the females, the younger females, that this is how we should be, be modest, and we do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's worship as well. That's worship. It's not just praying namaz. And then Allah says, the next passage is permission to eat together. So that's another passage where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is allowing us to eat together in a family, in a controlled and social environment. So the verse 61 goes and reads, there is no restriction on the blind, the disabled, the sick, or yourself eating in your own homes, or your father's homes, your mother's homes, your brothers, sisters, or uncles and aunt homes, or homes whose keys you hold, or at your friends' homes. It isn't blameworthy whether you eat together or separately. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the front base is quite simple, isn't it? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gone through some of the relationships, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you can, even at your friend's house, you can eat together. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to or addressing to believers, male and females. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there's no blame on you whether you eat collectively. So all the male and females are in one place and in one room, or if they decide to eat separately, so male in one room and female in other rooms, then that's your choice, and it's not blameworthy. So whenever you enter home, greet each other with a sincere blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the message here is that, and in previous verses as well, and there's a number of hadiths that when we go visit somebody's house, we say, first thing we should say, ought to say, is Assalamu alaikum. And then the next one we say, so if we're visiting an unknown family who are not friends or relatives, then first thing we say the Assalamu alaikum, and then one introduce themselves, and then we seek permission. Now the hadiths say that there's been occasions when somebody visited Hazrat Asha radhiyallahu anhu, and they seeked permission, and she said no. But when they said Assalamu alaikum at the same, there and then they seeked permission, then she allowed them to come into the house. So, and then Allah says, that is how Allah makes His verses clear for you, so you may reflect. We're close to the end, and it's been a real blessing and a mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I have been able to do this and share this with. Originally I had I was blessed that I should do something with my children because of the lockdown, but then we started sharing it with all the other, for yourselves as well. Every one of us have learned something, and please remember me in your du'as and everyone else around the world, from the ummah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those who are sick, those who are in need of one another du'as. Assalamu alaikum.